Hey everybody, welcome to Purpose People. Today I've got Olly Reid back for our meeting talking about all things help and humans. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Daryl.
So we had you on the sofa and you told your backstory. I can't remember what episode number it was, but it's definitely worth listening to and stuff. But today we want to talk a little bit about building and crafting and establishing yourself in business individually and then with your team. And there's a few exciting announcements that we want to bring to the table. So should we start there with the exciting announcement?
Yeah. So we are gearing up to launch HELP, which is a Humans Empowered Leadership Program. We go live in December this year. And we'll be helping leaders to look within themselves and understand their personal psychology, habits, mindsets, and beliefs, and then supporting them to really look at who they are as a leader. How to develop and define business strategy, leadership, and really building the type of organization that you intend to build. What we often find is a disconnect between personal success and professional success. And what we believe at Hum4ns is actually those two things can coexist. You can find balance and financial success, and you can be happier, healthier, smarter, and kinder. And Hum4ns Empowered Leadership Program really goes a long way to helping and giving leaders the tools that they need to make that a reality. So really excited to see it go live.
Yeah, no, it's going to be good. And I think for me, even a couple of people that I've spoken to have said, this is a little bit different from what I've seen out there in terms of leadership coaching and leadership training. And I think the key aspect of it is that happier, healthier, smarter, and kinder is not going to get left behind. It's not going to be hidden away. And a lot of the tools and the techniques are new, aren't they?
Yeah, we've been developing our tools really on the back of historic psychology and entrepreneurs. And along that journey, you start to define your own tools. And, we've supported hundreds of business owners over thousands of hours. And we're seeing these common themes, and our tools are reflective of A, what we've seen, but B, how we believe that people have overcome them or negotiated them. And the Hum4ns tools now are really, really powerful in helping people, A, find clarity. Where are they going wrong? When are they going wrong? Why are they going wrong? But more importantly, helping them to move forward from that. And so we often talk about Hum4ns not being about the acquisition of knowledge, it's about the application of it. Because I genuinely believe that most people know what they need to do, but doing it is a very different task. And we help and define how people might be able to do that.
So what does a happy leader look like? Because obviously you want to start with the end in mind. So, if you come and do this, what does a happy leader look like? What can you define that?
Yeah, well, when we first kind of defined what the 4 themes of Hum4ns were, what we found is that happiness usually comes from connection. So, if you're isolated and a multimillionaire, it's really clear to see that you're probably unlikely to be happy because of the isolation and because of the disconnection. And so happier stimulates relationships. And in a business sense, you hear all these stories about, the wolves and the sharks and all these other people that want to take a piece of what you've got. And you hear about, these people competing against each other in huge markets where actually competition probably isn't needed. Collaboration would probably work better. And we know that being a leader or an entrepreneur is a lonely path to walk down. Most of the time, friends and family don't understand the stresses or the strains or what you're going through. And so the happier bit for us is actually around how do you forge connections with like-hearted individuals? How do you feel like you belong in a community of people that have got your best interests at heart? And also, how do you collaborate, not just in terms of business growth, but in terms of personal learning? And we've toyed with, collective learning, this idea of people coming together towards a collective aim, which is personal and professional development or self-improvement. And what we know is that actually people that go on a journey together end up being more successful together. You only have to speak to a successful entrepreneur and find one that doesn't talk about the people that help them along the way. And the happier bit of the Hum4ns Empowered Leadership Program is about that connection and that belonging and going somewhere together. And I think that's been part of our ethos since day one.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I've spoken to a couple of people at the opposite end of the journey where they've grown their business and they've exited and they've got the cash in the bank.
Yeah.
And interesting, there's Simon Squid being one, and everyone's Kevin Byrne who started Cre8ion. And they often, as they reflect, they miss the team. They miss that whole collaboration thing. So they got the cash in the bank, but almost like looking for the next thing or the purpose aspect and that building thing. And I think as a leader, we sometimes, you're trying to do it all by yourself and on your own. And then it's like, you're at that level, but then you've lost your team because you've exited. And then you do feel even more isolated than you did even when you were under that pressure and trying to grow and trying to do those things. So I think there's a lot to be said for community. And I think, naturally, know Kevin a lot more than I know Simon Squibb, but he's got an outworking of helping people in Bangladesh. Yeah. And so there's a whole community there and he's making impact. So that's what gets him up in the morning and keeps him going. Simon is interesting. I saw one of his posts the other day and he said he exited, he sold his company and he misses it. He actually does miss it. And it was like, if he had his time again, it's almost like vacillating, what would he do? But what you've seen is now he's building a tribe around Help Bank and helping people. Yeah. And so he's trying to create that sense of belonging, so to speak.
Yeah, and I think that's where some of that leadership loneliness comes from. You build a team and you develop a team, and it's important that they see that you're vulnerable and open and willing to, communicate some of the challenges you're having. But there's also a professional layer where actually some of the challenges of being an entrepreneur aren't appropriate to communicate to your team. Yeah. And I think that's what creates the loneliness. And I worked with somebody in the past that said, as soon as you're a leader, you lose your ability to complain down. Yeah. Because ultimately, if you're complaining to your team about how hard things are and how tough things are, that changes the perception of the role that they play. Yeah. I think the other side of it is the Simon Squibb example that you've just given, that's like the kind of bit of what humans do. There's this mentality that first I have to be successful and then I can give back. Yeah. It doesn't work like that, actually. And what we see is that the most successful people are always telling you, start that earlier in the journey. Yeah. Your call to give back starts when you know something more than other people know. Exactly. And that sharing of that knowledge helps everybody to improve and move forwards.
And I mean, that was it, like chasing after the money for the money's sake can only keep you going long enough. I was talking to someone at the start of their journey and they were saying, well, I'm doing it for my family and I'm doing it for this. That's great. That's wonderful, but it's not enough. Yeah. If you have to have more than that to make room for other people. Otherwise, you just got a lifestyle business around yourself, paying your expenses. It's if that's that driving thing of making an impact, over 10, 15, 20 years, that will bring a whole load of other people along for the ride and for the journey to make an impact.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of the coaching we're doing now, we're starting to talk about legacy. And when we talk about, some of the Hum4ns products and services, we often get a call from somebody saying, can you come and do us a mindset workshop? And we say, yeah, that's great. But what's the legacy? What's happening after that? Yeah. Because, you don't go to the gym once and come back with a six pack. Same thing is that you don't do mindset once and you've got life figured out. It has to be a continuous process. Yeah. And I think that's the other thing about how we've developed Hum4ns now. Actually, it's a legacy. You come for one thing and that one thing stimulates the next part of that learning journey. And it is that consistent and that repeated behavior that drives long-term success. So it doesn't matter if you're on day 1 or day 100 or even 10 years down the line, the tools that we've created stimulate the psychological connection between who you are, what you're doing, and where you're heading. And it changes over time. And I think sometimes leaders forget that A, why they started in the first place, but B, that life and business has changed around them. Is the destination still the right one?
Yeah, what I've doing a lot of studying, a lot of and talking to different leaders around the aspect of generational building. Is that when Japan was obviously bombed in World War II and obviously the war ended, they got together and built a 500-year vision. Yeah, and you're like, wow. We've barely in this country got a 2-year vision. It's like we just get rid of the leader and bring someone else in. There's no blueprint and there's nothing that we're following or building. So it keeps getting torn up and starts again. And then obviously the people, which is a nation, continually moaning. Oh, this is useless, that's useless. So we change that person and then we're back to square one. And we're 100 odd days into the new government and everyone's moaning like they were moaning about the last government. Yeah. So for me, it's like, that whole generational thing, having something much bigger than like the now, is something to strive towards and something to build. And I think impact-led businesses are building generationally. They might not be running for their generation. They might hand it over to someone else, but there's a bigger mindset at play.
Yeah, and that happiness piece as well. Like you say, when you look outwards and you see all of the stuff happening in the world, and you listen to people at networking events, it's negative, 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 negative. And you go, well, actually, then if I'm surrounding myself with negativity at home and at work and everywhere in between, how can I come up for air and move towards something positive?
Yeah.
And so that happiness part of humans is actually surrounding yourself with people that have defined that they want to do better than their current situation, that they want to move forward with life, that they're ready to be positive rather than just criticize and be negative about the situation they're in. They're proactively saying, no, I want to move forwards.
Yeah.
And so having access to a community of people that are going to be positive, going to be forward thinking, will challenge and will hold you to account, but will do it in a positive and supportive way. I think that's worth its weight in gold anyway, to have people encourage and lift you up rather than criticize and put you down.
Well, that's it. I mean, certainly from my experience of, going on entrepreneurship programs, was that the community was so important. Often when the surveys went out, what do you enjoy most about it? It was about the community. And the biggest thing I said is that very rarely do you hang around a whole load of eagles. What I mean by that is people that see the bigger picture. Your picture may be different, but we're all building something that hasn't been done before, so to speak. And being around that really fires you up because, as you said, when you've got your staff around you, they don't always see the bigger picture. And, you can speak to those people going, it's been a bad day or it's been a bad week or a bad month or whatever. But as you said, if it's just you and your team, there's certain information that you don't want to share because you don't want to unsettle them. Or you feel like you're parenting them. Not to say that you want to parent them, but you're trying to protect them. For instance, if it is a tough time and someone's looking to change contracts and you're thinking, right, I need to replace that. You don't want to tell them that while you're in the process of trying to replace it.
Yeah.
Just to keep. Now you can be transparent, but I think there's transparency to a point where otherwise you just, you don't want to hear every single thing. The stuff that talking to my dad now, he's sharing with me that I was unaware of when I was a kid. And actually, I'm glad I was unaware of it, So for me, there'd be times to share it, but as a point of a story, but being part of people that are building stuff together, I think it's underrated. It's not talked about enough.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's that vulnerability piece as well. People feel like if they communicate to other leaders that things are tough and things are hard, then they'll be perceived as unsuccessful.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, we believe that it's a super strength to be able to say, this is really hard and I don't know what to do because I've never done it before.
Yeah.
Once you open yourself up for that support, people are generally really happy to give advice and support and encouragement. And I think that's one of the special things that we've created, this space where people can go, I haven't got a clue what I'm doing, but it's all right. And we'll help each other along the way.
Yeah. Because I think for me, it's like being networked as I do, when I hear stuff that comes back, I'll go and ask 6, 7, 8 people just to get a temperature check.
Yeah.
Is everyone feeling this way? I remember we were talking a while ago and I was saying, it was just a strange week. It's like everybody was like antsy the whole week. Yeah. And I don't know whether it's the weather or whatever it was, but it was like everyone was saying the same. Do you know what? You're right, And I noticed it because it was odd. And I think that was probably almost when it was leading up to the election maybe and people were a bit unsettled. It just filters down into life. But, to know that, it's not just me. It was like, I can relax a little bit. It's not like I'm doing things wrong,
Yeah, and I think that's the difference, that you're not just talking about challenges and problems. You're not just whinging and complaining. You're having that conversation and saying these things are difficult. And then somebody's going, great, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to move forward? So rather than staying in this negative place, let's proactively move forwards. And I think when you're surrounded by other leaders that are willing to challenge and say, what are we going to do about it? But also helping and willing to push you up the hill when you need it and willing to pull you along when you don't feel like you've got the stretch or the capacity yourself, that actually knowing that you'll be greeted with that level of understanding is such an important part of that leadership journey.
Yeah.
And I think again, when we think about business problems, so much coaching over the years, but I'm still yet to find a business problem that didn't relate to the mindset of the entrepreneur at the helm.
Yeah.
And that then is to do with leadership. It's to do with how did you lead yourself? How are you managing yourself? What's gone wrong in your mind in terms of how you're thinking about the problem, or what thinking were you using when you created it?
Yeah.
Then you flip that into, the Scale Up Institute. They've done so much research over the last 5 or 6 years pre-COVID around the top challenges facing scaling businesses. Leadership always comes up in it.
Yeah.
So if we acknowledge that there are traditional leadership and management courses, and we acknowledge that they're not necessarily giving people the skills they feel they need to thrive, then there has to be an alternative. And that's where the psychological aspect of what we do now in Hum4ns comes in. That we go, actually, then if we stop looking at the problem you think you've got,
yeah,
and start looking at the root cause, which is you,
yeah,
how do you then move forwards? And then you look at it from an employee perspective and you go, well, actually, one of the other top challenges from the Scale Up Institute is access to talent. You hear constantly about this skills gap and the fact that there's no talent out there. I don't believe in that myself. I don't prescribe to it, but I do believe there's an attribute gap. I think people have got skill. So you hire a marketing graduate from university, you take them into a new context. Have they got the mindset to take what they know and apply it to a new environment? Yeah. Have they got change readiness? Are they ready for a fast and crazy environment that being in a startup is? Are they resilient? Can they handle knockbacks and no's and difficult moments? Because if they can't do those 3 things, the marketing degree made no difference. They have to be able to take it into somewhere different. And again, it's the same with leadership. And what we're finding from some of the businesses that we're coaching, that are moving into the multiple millions of pounds and beyond, well, actually the business trajectory is like this, the personal trajectory is like this. And now there's a huge gap between the skill that I've got and the skill that I needed in order to thrive. And the Hum4ns Empowered Leadership Program is closing that gap by saying, right, let's work on your attributes. Let's work on helping you to define your values so you can build an organization that aligns with it. Helping you to define your vision so that your personal vision and your business vision match and you're moving collaboratively towards the right destination. Helping you figure out your habits. Are you doing the things that are conducive to being happier and healthier, or are you doing the opposite? And you sometimes tell a story that when you're an entrepreneur, the first things that go are your happiness, your connection with your family and your friends, your health, because you're working lots of hours and doing lots of other things, your intelligence, because now you've got imposter syndrome and all of the other things that come along with that, and your kindness. You don't feel like you've got the space to give back. And many leaders that we're speaking to are feeling that way, and we believe that it's a choice to feel something different. But that choice requires action.
Yeah, I think that on the smarter aspect of thing, I think there is a time when you're leading up to starting that thing. You might be reading the odd book, and then you just stop learning. And you're not giving yourself permission to learn. And when I look at it, I go, well, what have you been reading? I do a bit of networking, and in the networking they have like questions. And it's like, well, what book you read or what podcast you're listening to.
Yeah.
And the reality is, if you are a leader how do you stop yourself feeling like an imposter? You just learn. Just commit to learning over a period of time. It might be a new company, but if knowledge gives you clarity, which gives you the confidence. So if you're constantly reading and constantly investing in yourself, that's half the battle.
Yeah, you could argue that you should always feel like an imposter. Because if you're constantly moving forwards, then you're always venturing into the unknown.
Yeah.
And if you're always venturing into the unknown, then technically speaking, you are an imposter in a world that you haven't yet operated in.
Which is where you helped me, to be fair, when you said, are you a business owner or an entrepreneur? So if it was a business owner, I'm comfortable because I know brand inside out. I breathed it for many, many years. But entrepreneurship I'm learning every day.
Yeah.
It's a different animal completely.
Yeah.
And so therefore now I'm comfortable knowing that I'm an entrepreneur and I'm not going to have all the answers, and then just continue to look for people that do.
Yeah. And that's where the difference between imposter syndrome and inner critic becomes really important, because I think if you're a leader and you're feeling like an imposter, I think if we acknowledge that the trajectory of the business is doing this and you're doing that, then naturally you will feel that way, and that's part of the journey. Yeah. Whereas the inner critic part is that kind of self-doubt and that telling yourself you're not good enough or capable enough or haven't got the right skill. That's a negative place to operate from.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that inner critic bit is sometimes the thing that holds us back, whereas the imposter thing is more about how we feel in certain environments. And I think, again, you can teach that. You can change that perception of what an imposter means. Whereas if you've constantly got that self-monologue happening, it's really difficult then to move yourself into an effective space.
Which I guess that flips back into that purpose question where we talk about heart set, having your past, your present, and your future aligned. Because if you know you're meant to do this, from your past, you're naturally gifted in that area to do it.
Yeah.
And if you're ready to make the right decisions in the present to take what you've learned or take those skills, talents, abilities into the present, employ them, then when you get good at that, the future looks great because you're confident in what you do. It removes that, that self-doubt, that self-question, because you're actually doing what you're supposed to be doing. I'm not going to be here saying I'm going to be a golfer. I don't play golf. Do you know what I mean? And if I did, I used to, but if I did go on to a tournament and try and tee off against, the best of them, I'm going to be terrible. I'm going to feel like an imposter. But if I talk about purpose, I'm happy with that because I've lived in that space for so long that I'm happy to talk about it. And I don't feel so much as an imposter. Now, how that manifests in what different sectors and territories, and then that's uncomfortable. And I'm happy with that and understanding and learning on the job. But in terms of purpose, that's what wakes me up. That's what gets me up. That's what I enjoy.
Yeah. And I think when you can find that as a leader, and I think this is where, we talk about the two paths diverged in the woods and I took the one less traveled.
Yeah.
I know we both love that quote. As a leader, quite often, at some point, two paths did diverge and you took the one that was the way that you'd always have done it.
Yeah.
And doing so, you sometimes take yourself further away from achieving that dream and understanding, well, what is my purpose? What am I trying to achieve? When we do coaching and we look at that kind of personal and that business success and talk about that gap in between, it's because on one hand, I might be saying, well, I want to create a better work-life balance, but I also want to grow a multiple million-pound business. Well, the reality is next week, those two things are in conflict.
Yeah.
Because you can't simultaneously take some time off next week while driving towards being a multi-million pounds. You can do that over time, of course. But if your mentality is that that's going to happen next week and that's what you need in order to feel happy, healthy, smart, and kind, it's an unreasonable personal expectation. So you're setting yourself up to fail. And so part of that process is about honesty and saying, well, actually, it's not going to happen next week. Sometimes in order to achieve the thing you want to achieve, you must first do the thing you don't want to do.
Yeah.
And actually, if you can negotiate your purpose and find enjoyment along it, at the risk of being cliche, it is about the journey and not the destination. Now, if you're not enjoying the journey, you certainly won't enjoy the destination because when you get there, you're not going to feel how you wanted to feel. And so it is capturing it along the way. It's
an interesting one because I remember we were talking about it a while ago, actually, even before the podcast. Computer games. I don't know about you, but when I used to play a computer game, there was this perceived thing in my head that when I completed it, it was going to be the best graphics or the best celebration that I'd ever see. And then you'll get there and it'll just go, congratulations. Or the screen would flash. And you'd built this up and the anticlimax of actually doing it and going, oh. It was almost like if I'd actually played that game not knowing that was the case, I would have dwelled there a lot longer, so to speak, enjoyed the journey, enjoyed the process of doing things. And so, to some degree, to coin a phrase, I would have done a few more side quests along the route and actually enjoyed the experience and the open world rather than rush to the finish line and go, done the game.
Yeah.
And I think that's more like life. Life has its side quests and actually enjoy them because that is part of the process. There's stuff you're going to learn in the side quests that you could take to another part of the journey that you can educate and equip you.
Yeah, I love that. And again, we find that people don't tend to celebrate along the way. When you're an entrepreneur, it's always that future moment.
Yeah.
Joe Vitale talks about this concept that I'll be happy when, and you see people do it all the time. I'll be happy when I get married. I'll be happy when I have kids. I'll be happy when I get a bigger house. I'll be happy when I get a nicer car. And then that moment happens, and all that happens is you go, well, I'll be happy when, and there's something else to replace it. And so again, we are kind of programmed, some part through psychology and some part through society, to not celebrate the moments that we have along the way. And unfortunately, it takes a wake-up call or the end of life for us to reflect back and go, these are the moments that were absolutely brilliant for me.
Yeah.
And again, thinking about help, day number 1 is the Hum4ns game plan.
Yeah.
One of my favorite parts of that is momentous moments, where we encourage the audience to go back through the photos in their phone and connect with a photo that they took and really consider, why is this a momentous moment for you? And what we've found through doing that is you speak to people after they've pulled out a photo and they go, do you know what? At that moment, at that time, I was thinking about a million other things. I weren't there in that present moment. And it's only now with hindsight, that was a brilliant day.
I mean, I go through my phone even just this year, some of the things I've done, and it's like, I'm so on to the next thing. And I was thinking the other day, I just need to go and sit somewhere and just think about some of the things I actually did, just like replay them to re-enjoy them a little bit. But it's like there's such as a demand for the future, and it's like I haven't made that time yet. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like if I'm going for a walk, I'm going for a walk, and I want to solve these 10 problems, rather than just not think about what you were doing like 4 weeks ago when you're in the middle of Colorado, up a mountain, and remembering the views. Yeah, and I haven't done it. Because I just like constantly, but we know that anyway. That's been my thing, where I just don't celebrate wins, and I got to learn,
Yeah, and you're certainly not alone in that, are you? And that's part of the ethos as well. That actually, we know that people don't make time. They don't make time for personal or professional development. They don't make time to reflect and consider. They don't take time to celebrate the wins. They don't take time for health and well-being and solitude in some sense, which is often needed. And what we've done within the program is made time for those things. Yeah. And over the years, my commitment to personal and professional development is unrivaled, some might say. Yeah. I always seem to be doing something or learning something or putting my brain into something where I'm stimulating new thought processes. And one of the recent things I did was the ILM Level 7 executive coaching. Mm-hmm. And when I started to work my way through that and started on some of the reflective pieces, what I realized is actually reflection is the single most important tool. So you can do all of the learning you want, do all of the courses you want, get all of the qualifications you want, but if you don't reflect on any of it, and you don't connect to why was that important for me and how do I understand it and how can I share it, the learning might as well have not taken place.
It's why for me, what's enabled me to slow down is to write. Mm. Because when you're forced to write, so like I write a blog most weeks, I'm forced to reflect and then forced to structure the principle that I was applying in that situation. Yeah. And so therefore I'm evaluating what I've done. I'm not like, reverse psychology, as in I'm coming up with the plan that I did afterwards. But it's like, well, what did I apply? How did it, and what lesson can I pass on to someone else? Yeah. So I think for me, how I'm slowly turning that corner of celebrating the wins or reflecting is writing. That discipline of writing a blog, which then produces a framework or a methodology that I've applied, slows me down enough to be present in the present.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where long-term success comes from. Because if you've done something and it was successful and you've not reflected on why it was successful, you can't replicate it. Yeah. Whereas that reflection piece helps you to go, yes, this was either good or bad, and it was good or bad with reflection. And if it was bad, I can take some positives from it because I can learn how to not avoid that problem next time. Or I can learn how to repeat and move forward with it. Yeah. And I think, again, that reflection piece, especially when you speak to entrepreneurs and business owners, they don't build it into their day or how they work or operate. And so therefore success becomes incidental or accidental, as does failure.
Well, it's like that thing. It's like diarise in that time, that space to think things through. Because often it's like, I remember creatively, you needed that time. You'll start a creative project and then you just have to go for a walk, go get a coffee or whatever, go and think. And for me, it was like, we often, when we're making quotes, don't even put that time in. Yeah. As a creative, often don't put that, well, we just do the brochure, but we don't think about this is how we do the brochure or structuring the pages. We don't even put that in the quote. It's just like, it's 12 pages, this amount of text, and put the quote over. When actually you need to buy that in. That's the creative time. That's the creative strategy. Yeah. And that was something that I was when I very first started with Cre8ion, I realized that just like all this time that I wasn't accounting for. It was just like, it's the end result. It's not the actual, the Imagineering, so to speak. Walt Disney's, the theme parks and that were in his brain for years. He could see it. He spent so much time there. But I think there was a very famous quote where they turned around and said, "What does it look like?" And he said, "I've known what it's looked like forever."
Yeah.
It may not be finished yet, but I know what it looks like. Because he had died, I think, just before they finished one of the big ones. I think it was Disney World. I think he missed out on, and the point of it is that he'd always seen it. They said, "Oh, well, he missed out on seeing it." He said, "No. He lived with it every single day, but he gave himself the space to come up with it." And then he had a team of creatives called the Imagineers.
Yeah,
and they were charged with dreaming it all up.
Yeah, and I was talking to somebody the other day about where and when do you get your best ideas, and it's always on the toilet, in the shower, somewhere where the outside stimulants have been removed. And again, if we don't create space for that and life doesn't naturally give them to us, then as business owners, that's a really important part of that development process. Because, if you haven't got time to figure out what needs to be done, you just going on and doing stuff. And
well, it's a proven fact that if a creative is under immense pressure, they're less creative.
Yeah.
And yet in the industry, that's often what it is. It's like hard, tough deadlines. The marketeers have just promised the earth to the client and they want a campaign out within 2 days. And I ain't got time to think this through, And I think you do it. I think when you've got experience, you can fire quicker.
Yeah.
But it's the creative process, whether it's creativity in terms of marketing or creativity in terms of business planning, you have to give yourself that time. And I think taking time out to get coached or taking time out to invest in you, in your business is you create a much healthier business.
Yeah. Yeah. And not just a healthier business as well, but you'll then transcend that to your employees as well.
Yeah.
Because if you're a leader that isn't developing yourself and yet you're expecting your employees to develop, you're not leading by example and you're not showing them the path. And so quite often the leaders that aren't developing themselves or not giving themselves the right time to develop tend to be the ones that aren't developing the team or giving the team opportunities that give them skill but not attribute. And it's always that quick win. Like you say, if I read a book, then tomorrow I'll have more knowledge than I had today, and that's brilliant. Well, it is, but only if you're actually got to do something with what you've learned. It's
an interesting one because I think, like, I was talking to Carmelita the other day. I saw her at the conference that she ran in London, and they said to me, they said, "Look, you've been speaking on different stages," and it was just the way that they got my mind to tell her. She said, "But you don't need to speak on every stage."
Yeah, and
she said, Carmelita chooses where she speaks now. Not because it's for the money or whatever. It's just the amount of value that she can bring, and is it worth doing? Mm-hmm. So it's like she says, you'll be much better in a position where you're the smallest person in the room, or the smallest speaker, than you being the biggest speaker. And I was like, oof, okay. And so she spoke to me at the end of the conference, goes, "Right, I want you to speak next year. And if all being well goes well, I'm going to be sharing some stages where I'm going to feel like the undercard, and by comparison." And I think for me, that's uncomfortable, but that's what she mentioned to me. That's where you need to be. You need to be where you're not the smartest speaker, or you can deliver and you can, but now you're like working with people at the top of their game as well. It's not a question that whether you can be at the top of your game, but you're putting yourself in a place that you feel stretched. Yeah. And that's the only way you're going to grow. And it was just, it was good that she saw that, because she just said, "You know what, we've been watching you, talking here, talking there, talking there." She says, "But don't go and speak on every stage." Yeah. And I'm like, "Oh, I just want to give as much value as possible. I don't care, But she said, "Yeah, but there comes a point where you don't. There comes a point where actually it'd be much better for you to give value to 1,000 people than 10.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think going back to the question around community element.
Yeah.
I think it is that moment where you go, right, I could go to 100 rooms, or I could buy 100 books, and I could meet 100 people. But actually, if you meet the right people with the right intention and the right mindset, then the value and ethos of that community amplifies the reach tenfold.
Yeah.
I think the other thing is, again, part of that growth conversation at the moment is we're always talking about getting out of our comfort zones.
Yeah.
There's a new train of thought now which talks about getting into your growth zone.
Yeah.
It's a different mentality.
Yeah.
And what it demonstrates is, well, actually, I'm not doing something that is overly negative because it's uncomfortable. I'm doing something that can be perceived as positive because it's a space of growth.
Yeah.
And it opens the door to that argument between, entrepreneurs or leaders feeling a fear of failure.
Yeah.
I can't try this because if I fail, I'll look silly. Or I can't ask this question because, other people might perceive it as being stupid. Or I can't do this because, and there's all these excuses. Whereas actually, if you flip that mentality around and say, if I don't ask this question, I won't understand and therefore I can't action. And if I ask a question, it might appear stupid, but if that gives me clarity and I can move forward, fantastic. So there's a change in mentality, I think, that we need to start having in life and in business in general, actually, which is about it's okay to fail. It's okay to get it wrong. It's okay to be perceived as being silly or stupid.
Yeah.
But it's important we don't stay there. And that's the difference. If we absorb that knowledge and engage and surround ourselves with people who are open and willing to us asking those types of questions, and that's where we move into our growth zone.
It's an interesting one. The other flip of that is that, a lot's talked about fear of failure, whatever else, but I think there comes that point where it's fear of success. And for me, that's probably what I challenge with more. Who does he think he is now? So even like I'm posting stuff from the conference and I'm like, well, I don't want to put myself first. So like in LinkedIn, you put the numbers of photos. And then if you you only have 20, so then you take it off and then it reconfigures them all. And I'm like going, well, do I put myself first? But then if I put myself first, what will people think? Well, but the reason you're putting it on is because it's your profile and they want to see you speaking, but you did what you said you were going to do.
Yeah.
But there's that point of going, yeah, but what do they think? Well, they think I'm being too egotistical. So you overthink it.
Yeah.
And for me, there's that aspect of success will come if you're doing the right things, and you need to be comfortable with success. It's like when someone gives you a compliment and you just pan it down. Oh yeah, whatever. And I know you do that a lot. Just like I move on. But it's to say no. It's not about being egotistical. It's saying, look, if you're doing the right things, you make an impact. It is not to get carried away in the ups and the downs, but just accept it.
Yeah.
Accept that you've made a difference. Accept that you're helping people, accept that you have something to give that is leaving impact, and enjoy it. Enjoy that you are doing what you're supposed to do and other people are benefit of it.
Yeah.
Spend some time there. And I think certainly I've been guilty of just like going, yeah, whatever, I'm off to the next thing.
Yeah, and that ties into that feeling of success as well, because we don't reflect on those moments. We don't feel like success. And then when people do give us those compliments, we kind of shy away from it.
Yeah.
Whereas actually, one of the things I started doing quite early on in my coaching journey is if somebody had written me a thank you card, I actually started pinning it on a wall in my office. So anytime I get that inner critic moment, I just go and pick one of the cards up and read it. Yeah. And these cards are saying, thank you so much for doing X. It's really made a difference in my journey. I'll never forget it. And you go in, no, like I can say that I'm really good at what I do because I've got the evidence for it.
Yeah.
And I think, again, when we look at life and that entrepreneurial journey, we very rarely look back on where we started and what we felt like because we haven't documented that journey. We don't see the stage getting bigger because we're always on a new stage.
But that's interesting. And I think, that collecting those things and reflecting on those, because you have no problem in collecting the negative ones that live with you. Yeah. That one person that said you were rubbish, or that one person that didn't understand what you were talking about, that one person that disagreed with you. And you know what I mean? We will remember those really clearly. And it's like that, trying to flip your mindset to say, no, actually, if out of 100 people that you've impacted 99 people, don't worry about the one person. Chances are it's the one person with the problem because you've helped 99.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a story that my daughter's got. I forget the name of it now, but it's about a princess in a garden and she's with her friend and her friend has to go away somewhere. And there's a little bird that lives in the tree. And while the friends have been talking, he's magpieing all of the words that they're using. And they're all, really grateful words, inspiring, colorful, connection between people. And he weaves them into his nest. When the friend goes away, obviously the princess feels different. And the words that she starts to use become negative and sad. And so all the birds in the garden decide they're going to try and take her something to help cheer her up. And they take her gifts, they take her food, they take her all sorts of things, and none of it works. And so the little bird in the end decides he's going to take her some words from his nest, which were words that were familiar with to her in terms of gratitude and things like that. And anyway, he takes her these words and it reminds her of actually the power of connection. And it starts to perk her up. And as it starts to perk her up, those words start to become more and more frequently used and repeated. And anyway, it reminds me about not only how we kind of perceive success and how we need those ability to kind of look back on what we did, how we did it, you know, how it was appreciated, the impact that we've had, but also the power of words.
Yeah.
And quite often the words that we use to ourselves, we don't segment them.
No.
You know, we think about how we talk to other people. We think about the words we use with others, but we don't always regulate the words that we use to ourselves.
Yeah.
And early on in my kind of mindset journey, I realized that there was stuff that I was saying to myself that I wouldn't allow anybody else to say to me.
Yeah.
You know, if somebody else was putting me down the way that I might have put myself down, I'd be saying, well, hang on a minute. Who do you think you are?
Yeah.
That's not okay, but we do it to ourselves.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, again, we pass our power out to the external, where we've got to get control of that internal bit. And that's where there's a difference between leading others and leading ourselves. And sometimes we start the opposite way around for me. And that's why the program's designed in the way it is, because first we have to get a grip of ourselves.
Yeah, of course.
And then we can start to get a grip of others and how we might support them to then get a grip of themselves. And that's part of that leadership journey.
No, I get it. I think for me, that's that piece of just hearing yourself talk aloud, you know, or writing it down. You write it down and read it back and go, whoa, hang on a second, what's going on there? Because you recognize it's not coming from a good place, and it obviously doesn't build you up and doesn't help you. And I think one of the things I was doing the other day, I don't know, you got an iPhone, and there are other phone brands out there, but in the cloud where you got all the pictures, and you go through all the pictures of, like with my kids, I'm looking at them at different stages of their lives or whatever, and you remember them as like these. You've been with them like 15, 16 years or whatever, but you remember them as these little characters along the route, like different phases in their life. Yeah. And I was like looking at Lee, and I remember when he was a toddler and he would just run everywhere, never stop running or whatever. And like looking at him now, he's like turning into a man. His voice is deeper. He's getting bigger now. And you look at it, and he's like, to just focus on those moments and be that encouraging voice at those moments in time really helps them. You know, and for me, it's like those words of affirmation, encouragement, you know, like go for it, do it, you know, you can do it. You know, I've watched you grow from this person to this person. And I think we don't spend enough time to ourselves, first and foremost, because we don't look at the pictures of ourselves. We might do and go, oh, I wish I was thinner, or wish I had more hair or whatever. But we don't look at ourselves and go, yeah, but at that time you were struggling then, and now you're still here.
Yeah.
You know, it's like if you can do it then, you can keep going.
Yeah, I think that's a really lovely example as well, because with child growth, you've got that visible and visual trajectory. Yeah. You see them change physically over time. Whereas actually what we haven't acknowledged is the journey that we've been on in that same time. We might have got balder and more hair on our face, but actually how we've changed over that period of time is significant as well. Yeah. And I think sometimes it takes somebody else to remind you of how far you've come. Yeah. And again, I think that's part of the power of the Hum4ns community, that actually people are saying to each other, look at what you've just done. Like you'd never have done that 6 months ago, 12 months ago. And I had a coaching session actually with somebody last week that I've probably been coaching now for about 18 months. And when I first started coaching them, the mindset was, you know, quite negative, always seeing challenges. And I was on this call with them, having not caught up with them for a little while. And they said, oh, yeah, you know, I had this problem and I was thinking about this and I was thinking about this. And then I gave this solution. And I was like, look at you go. Yeah. And they were like, what? I said, I'm so proud of how you've just articulated that, because 18 months ago, it wouldn't have been like that. And you could see straight away, they had this wave of emotion going, do you know what? You're 100% right. Yeah. But if I hadn't been there and I hadn't have had that conversation, I'd never have seen that level of growth that they've been on in that journey. Yeah. So sometimes having people that are with you on that journey, bought into your success, willing to give you that feedback. Yeah. Again, we know that most of the time, actually, if somebody does something wrong, we quite openly tell them. When people do things right, we tend not to disclose that in the same way. No, and that's it. And I think that's the power of community, because you got the power of that
almost that peer-to-peer learning, as we talked about collective intelligence, is that the collective goes, we see you. We see what you've been up to, and that's what I love about the Hum4ns talks is someone gets off stage that's had a talk. They know they should have done it and hadn't done it. I remember Gideon, for example, recently, he finally went up there and delivered his talk. He comes down and he's like, and everyone was like, wow, that was incredible. He's like a natural. And now he's going to go and talk again. So like he's broken his duck, but it was almost like there were key people like Sam encouraging him behind the scenes going, when are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? And eventually that voice got so loud at some point where he went, okay, I'm going to do it, which is great. And in fact, you didn't give him too much time to think about it as well, if I remember right.
Yeah.
We had someone drop out and we drafted them in. But it was that community of saying, right, come on, let's pull you along. Let's get you outside the comfort of your own understanding and just step into something else. And there's always a reason not to. You can always find an excuse not to. And I mean, it's recognizing that just go and do it. Just take the risk.
And I think a lovely part of that story as well, actually, is the power that Sam played behind it.
Yeah.
Because there's something about human connection and motivation that sometimes when you don't feel like you can do something for yourself, you find it easier to do for somebody else.
Yeah.
And so interestingly, I know that's one of the ways that I work, right? So if I wanted to go and run 10K, I wouldn't do it for myself. But if you said to me, Ollie, I want to get in good shape. Will you run 10K with me? Otherwise, I don't think I can do it. I'd be right next to you. No problems at all. No
don't
questions
worry, I'm not running 10K.
We'll get you out there. But there's something about my makeup that actually I can serve for others in a way that I can't serve for myself.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I often do is if I want to achieve something, I can create an artificial situation to help other people get there so I can take myself on that journey too.
Yeah.
And you can see that kind of in human psychology, really. People going, right, well, I might not be able to do this for me, but I can do it for you. And that's a really important part then of how do you build community and how do you build connective learning and how do you grow leaders? Well, actually, if I can step out of my comfort zone for you and you'll do it for me, then we'll both move forward together.
Yeah.
And we're not on stages now where mine's bigger than yours, because guess what? If I can get on there for you, you're going to join me on there as well. And so we'll both go in that direction. And
that's what I remember. That's what I remember, like, when I was at the hub and stuff, many years ago, was that having those conversations, like, I'm going through a tough time, but don't worry about it. And we're comparing notes.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're going, I'm perfect and you're perfect and let's celebrate how perfect we are. It's not that we're both going through tough times. How are you feeling today out of 1 to 10?
Yeah.
And you could go, I'm a 4, and there's no judgment, so to speak. It's like, all right, well, how do we move on? And you're almost coaching each other. It's almost like collaborative coaching, 100%. Like in a room, and you're like, okay, yeah, maybe I can do it then. And I'm not the only one going through tough stuff. And as I said, everyone's got a story and everyone's going through tough things, but we don't talk about it enough. And it's not that we're trying to be negative, but we're talking because we want to solve it together. And that's the power of group coaching and stuff like that.
And that's the difference, isn't it? The actually searching for a solution.
Yeah.
There are a group of people in society that don't actually want a solution. They like the whinging, complaining and blaming. Yeah. That's where they live and that's where they're comfortable.
Yeah.
And I think once you acknowledge that, and we talk about the ducks, the quackers, and there's always something wrong. And anywhere you go, you'll overhear that. Once you start paying attention to it, you'll hear people complaining about everything, from the weather to just everything. But it does take a moment to pause and reflect and consider, well, actually, what's the flip side of that? My car broke down. Yeah, but isn't it great you had a car?
Yeah.
It's raining today. Well, if it never rained and you're just purely in sunshine all the time, guess what? You've only got to go on holiday for 2 weeks to Spain and suddenly it's too hot. We find these things to whinge about all the time. And so that ability of a community to call it out when that's happening, actually, but also then to encourage you to move forward from it. And, if it's raining, get yourself an umbrella. And if you haven't got one, I'll share mine. That's all right. It's that mentality. And I think that's what changes the nature of how people move forwards.
Well, it's because you're doing life together and you're seeing it from multiple perspectives. And often you're going through life on your own perspective. And you can say, okay, that's not perfect, but have you seen the other 8 things that you're doing quite well?
Yeah.
And someone has to remind you that actually it's going quite well. And I think it's the nature of an entrepreneur where you're always pioneering. You do live with a great degree of imperfection.
Yeah.
It's not that you want to full stop it. It's just part of the journey that they're going to be unresolved things, maybe not unresolved trauma, but unresolved stuff that you're going to have to live with that you can't solve on that day.
Yeah.
You might have to wait a week or a month or 6 months. And it's learning that, you know, as much as you want it all done, you're going to have to live with that certainty of what it's going to be uncertain. It's never going to be perfect in every single sphere of life. You might be absolutely smashing it in business, but you haven't seen your daughter for a while. You know, so you know that's not quite right, but this is going well. So you're going to have to make an adjustment at some point to know that it's not all going to be perfect.
Yeah. And again, tying into that kind of happiness theme, what we see is that people have patterns in life.
Yeah.
You know, win some, enjoy it, feel like you're failing again. Win some, enjoy it, feel like you're failing again.
Yeah.
People can go through that same pattern. They could go through patterns of enjoying what they're doing and hating it. They can go through patterns of feeling financially successful and then feeling, you know, on the bums, if you like. And again, acknowledging and seeing our own pattern makes you, again, feel disconnected or connected to what it is you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, you know, if you say, well, if I want to be successful in business and I want to build a multi-billion pound business, but I've got a 3-year-old at home, for argument's sake, you might go, well, actually, is the next 5 years the right time to do that? Or will I wait until they're at secondary school?
Yeah.
Can I find a better balance now that gives me a better balance in the future? And what's important for me now versus what's important in the future? Because life goes fast.
Yeah.
And again, I think it's that honest bit where people need to just kind of pause for a moment and go, actually, if I want to dive into a business because that's what's going to make me feel happier, and in doing so, I can then give back more to my child, that's okay. That's my decision to make. But if I'm forever in conflict between those two things, that's where the frustration starts to build. And again, what that comes down to is, well, vision, values, and direction, heart set. And so if you're not sure on what you're trying to achieve, if you're not sure on the timeline for achieving it, when do you actually want it, then it's really difficult to find it. And again, lots of the people that we coach, you ask them the question, what do you actually want in life and business? They find it really difficult to answer because we don't stop and reflect and consider.
Yeah, it's an interesting one because I over the last, I think I mentioned it to Paul when we had him on, and is that I'm very much focused on generations. And the reason why generations is that goes back to that reflective piece. You can compare yourself to someone else. There's always going to be someone with a bigger boat. You know, you see these multi-millionaires with their amazing yachts, and then another sheikh from wherever is going behind it with a boat 7 times the size. And that's the point. There's always someone who's got more money, more fame, more reach, whatever. Now, you don't know what they've compromised to get to there. They might have all that, but they've got no family, for example. So the first thing is stop comparing yourself there. Yeah. But the insight I want to bring to the table is this, is that if you think generationally based on the background that you had, and the success that you have now, the success might be just keeping the family together, which was unheard of for the last 300 years. Yeah. And celebrate that. Because for me, we look at very much in the sort of like 10 or 15 year window, and we don't look at our family tree and go, oh my gosh, you know, out of all these people, I'm actually doing all right by comparison to them, based on all the circumstances that I've been brought into as in being born and the different backgrounds or whatever. And I managed to make a go of life here so that when I die and I hand over to my kids, they will run further. And they might have all the trappings of success that the world judge amazing. But it's just to recognize where you are in that journey. So you might be turning generations by 1 or 2 degrees, but help, as long as you can get the next generation to a much better place, you've done your job. And I think that sometimes we put ourselves under so much pressure thinking, well, I haven't got the car, the house, the this, that, and the other. And I'm going, yeah, but hang on a minute. You know, were your family 2-car? Were they a 2-car family, for example? Yeah. Well, you are. Well, that's a bit different, isn't it? It's just little things like that we take for granted because we're comparing ourselves to, you know, I don't know, Michael Jordan, for example. Yeah. And it's like, well, don't compare yourself to Michael Jordan. Yeah, it's a rags to riches story, but there are a whole load of things there that got him to where he needs to get to. But if you know Michael Jordan, he's still living with the fact that his father was murdered. I mean, you know, so you look at that, there's always something that people are having to deal with. So it's trying to compare yourself and look at it in the light of the generations that you lived and go, she was doing all right. by comparison.
Yeah, and I think it's, how do you reframe what wealth means? Because when people use the word wealth, we quite often naturally move towards financial wealth.
Yeah.
And actually that generational thing, if you could look back over 300 years and say my family were happy, over multiple generations, they were happy, regardless of what they owned.
Yeah.
We transitioned what they knew about creating happiness through that many generations. That's legacy, because financial wealth will come and go.
Yeah.
And in different generations, it'll mean different things. And so that wealth that we seek to pass down generationally, for me, actually starts to become, well, how do you build and keep and maintain what it means to be happy? And the interesting thing is, if you find a new parent and you say, what do you want your child to be when they grow up? What's the answer? Because it certainly isn't rich.
Yeah.
It's happy.
Yeah.
So how do you create that? And again, it's that psychological stimulus is that we naturally go, well, in order for my child to be happy, I need to maintain and provide a certain level of wealth.
Yeah.
Where actually, if you go to some of the poverty-stricken countries, there are some really happy people that live there.
Well, this is it. I mean, it's a famous John Lennon quote, what do you want to be when you grow up? When he was at school and he said happy, and for me, that's the aspect of, everyone chasing after money. But if you actually look at it, wealth rarely lasts beyond 3 generations. Someone gets it, someone maintains it, and the next lot squander it.
Because they have no connection with the earning of it.
Exactly.
Right?
They then see the pain and the trials and the tribulation,
Yeah.
And so, interestingly enough, as doing a little bit of study, if you look at the Jewish race, for example, there's only 16 million Jews in the world. They have a lot of money and a lot of wealth. One of the key reasons they've attributed to is they literally encourage their kids. Like once a week, they got their kids in front of them and they're saying, you can be everything you can. Just that positive affirmation over them saying, you can do this, you can do that. So is it no wonder they end up doing the financial roles, the doctor's roles, because they're actually being encouraged that you can do it. A positive affirmation. And we see it in pockets in other areas of society. And I think there's the responsibility as a parent that, if you want your kids to outlive you and outgo, then start speaking positively to them and saying, you can. It's not like delusional, if they can't kick a football and you say, oh, you're going to be a pro footballer. No, but your responsibility is to find out what they're really good at and then just help take them along that way and encourage them,
Yeah, we see elements of that. Yeah, it's funny as well when you talk about parents, right? Ask somebody what the nan is like in their life.
Yeah.
And the nans are usually, these real friendly caregivers that give the kids chocolate and all this other stuff. Ask your mom what they were like as a mom, and you usually get something completely different.
Yeah.
And again, it is that moment that actually when we are operating with our own kids now, that actually we're operating from a place of stress and strain.
Yeah.
We're trying to build careers, we're trying to build lives, we're trying to manage the day-to-day. Whereas once you get past that, and you're able to give from a different place because you feel like some of your other needs are being met, actually what you deliver is something else. And again, that ties back into this kind of happiness over time bit and this contentment over time. And I was preparing a talk recently actually called The Pursuit of Happiness, about how people chase this feeling through life and very rarely catch it. That's why it's a pursuit. Yeah. Whereas actually, if we really look at it, then happiness lives in the now. So you have to find it in the now. You have to find it in the chaos. You have to find it in the strain. And it is there. Yeah. It's there in all of these little things that we've kind of talked about. And that, again, lends itself into business then, which is that there are things that happen in business, things that you're going to need to do to grow a business that you're not going to enjoy.
Yeah.
But if you understand why you're doing them, if you're understanding how they provide you the right platform for growth, or how they help you to move forwards, or how they give you the ability to do or achieve something else, then actually you can be more connected to them at the time. So that connection piece, you go, well, actually, then this is the bridge between where I am and where I want to be, or the bridge between who I am and who I intend to be. And again, I think what we've created from a programmatic sense is a program of support that helps you to transition between those two worlds, because it gives you and forces you to pause, consider, reflect, and then take action.
No, it's great because it's recognizing that we're all on a journey. It goes back to that enjoying the journey rather than just be so focused on that the destination piece, because actually you might get to the destination and, it's funny enough, talking about Paul, about vision. It's not just that. It goes beyond the original vision. It could be more than what you perceive it to be.
Yeah.
Is to enjoy that space, enjoy the process. And I think, when your kids are 18, you'll look back and go, oh, I wish I could relive some of that. There might be areas that you don't want to relive, but generally speaking, I look at I've got 17-year-old now, and it's like, oh my gosh, where did that go?
Yeah.
And I remember the crayons all over the wall and their bedroom and their Lego everywhere. I remember those days, like yesterday, but then you kind of, some of that mess, you can go back there, in your own head and go, I remember those days, they were fun. Yeah. But at the time you're like, I'm surviving.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And lots of leaders feel like they're surviving rather than thriving.
Yeah.
And I think that's the interesting thing, that when you look at it and go, okay, well, what would need to change in life or business for you to feel like you're moving in the right direction, like you're connected to the growth that's occurring? That's where the pillars of the program, the one-to-one coaching, helping you to find clarity and focus, the workshops that give you knowledge and space to apply and reflect, the community, which gives you encouragement and support to move forwards, and the well-being activities that give you the rest and recuperation that we know many leaders don't have. All of the things that we've talked about today and the kind of psychological aspects of how we've built it are giving leaders a space to do the things they know they should be doing, but regularly not doing. And it's going, actually, let's not just talk about it. Let's actually go and do it, and we'll do it together. And I think I'm really excited about it. I'm excited to see what it will do. We've already got people signed up and ready to go. And so
just where would someone sign up? Is it just the Hum4ns website? Is that
so if you go to humans.co.uk/help, you'll find a page for the Hum4ns Empowered Leadership Program. At the bottom of that page, it'll give you a link to the Hum4ns Empowered Leadership Assessment. And that assessment is something that we've created basically to help leaders to understand where they are on the path towards success right now. So the assessment covers things like habits, mindset, emotional intelligence, starting to really understand who you are and how you're operating now. It's not a psychometric, but what it does is it helps to understand the consistency of which you're deploying some key things that help you to be successful. The other part of it is that it's also got an empowered leadership score in there. So there's a series of questions around how you support and develop your team. They'll then, again, give you an insight into where are the areas for development and where's the area for focus. Once you've completed that, it only takes you about 15 minutes. And we've already had some transformational conversations off the back of that. You can then click to sign up for a one-to-one, where either you or I will go through the report and what it means. And then if you're in the right place and you're ready to move forwards, you can get onto the Hum4ns Empowered Leadership Program, which we're currently, one of our values is giving. So we've started with the Hum4ns Scholarship. So you can access coaching, community, workshops, and wellbeing activities, all included for just £300 a month.
No, I'm excited, and obviously with the partnership that we've got with our friends at Lexus Bristol as well. So we're really excited about that, and the next phase of Hum4ns is going to be a really cool one. Being around that community of business, like-hearted, like-minded people is going to be really exciting. So thanks so much for unpacking. We could see it for ages. That's why I'm in business with you, because we could talk about this stuff for a long while, but I trust a lot of people got a lot of value out of today. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to the Purpose People podcast. How you can help us is to like and subscribe our YouTube channel. You can also subscribe to our podcasts on Apple, Spotify, Google and Amazon. That helps us get our message out there to help people go after their dreams, double down on it, and be successful in life on their terms.